Hey guys, thanks for joining me. Today I'm here with Ahmed, returning guest, and probably by sales volume, the most successful print-on-demand seller. You've hit some incredible numbers. You said you're trending for 20 million this year. Welcome back, man. I want to know what's been up with you. How's business?
Thanks for having me, Ryan. Honestly, business has been okay. It's been challenging to say the least. We've went through a lot of ups and downs last year. We hit some challenges that I could not have seen coming, and when they happened, caught me by surprise. But I think we learned a lot. So there's a lot I think that I have to share. I'd love to be transparent and kind of give people the reality of what it looks like to be a business owner.
No, I really appreciate that. Probably not what we expected to hear when we hear the, big numbers like $20 million in sales, roughly. That's an insane number, but I guess it does come with its bumps along the way. But by the way, let me quickly plug. We sat down together in the past. We had some incredible interviews, 2-part, and they should have done like 100x the views that they did. So I'm going to link to them in the YouTube cards and in the description, so you guys can go check those out. Not a prerequisite to this video, but check them out afterwards if you like what you hear. But yeah, man, like, do you mind just kind of elaborating on, maybe catch us up for those that didn't catch the first interviews, of like how your business is kind of set up and maybe
yeah, totally. I try to skip too much of like the bio stuff because I feel like I put out so many videos on that already. So just to try to not be too repetitive. But long story short, we started in e-commerce back in 2015. Me and 2 co-founders. The story about how we got started is interesting, but once we got into drop shipping, we tried obviously a bunch of different products, a bunch of different stores, and found very little success in the first 8 months. I think everything that's worth doing takes time. And so after that first 8 months, we finally made like our first real dollar online. And once that happened, it was like a snowball effect. Everything started to click and make sense. And so we just tripled down on, what we were doing with building Shopify stores, dropshipping stores. Over the years, we learned about branding, and that was probably the biggest unlock, because the way we saw it initially was, hey, I'm just trying to make a buck, trying to sell a product. But once you start learning about branding and the fact that, there's an LTV to a business that you can build, a lifetime value for people that don't know, and you can have returning customers if they have a good experience, then you're building something worthwhile. So once that unlock happened around 2018, then we got really serious about it. And over the last 5-6 years, growth has been incredible. But that's, something that I really want to touch on during this conversation, because growth is amazing. Growth is great. However, growth doesn't really mean much if your margins aren't there, if you're not profitable. So there's so much that happens in the back end of a business that's really important to talk about, and how to go about doing things the right way. I've made 100 different mistakes, and we'll put that all out there today, I think. But just in general, to go back to the structure of our business, we have a holdco. It's called A3 Ventures. Me and 2 co-founders own that. Under that, on one side, we have our print-on-demand manufacturing facility. That's called Home Decor Fulfillment. And so we have around 50 plus active clients in that business. They're all doing wall decor. So like neon signs, acrylic prints, canvas prints, products like that. And so we manufacture their products from scratch, ship them directly to their customers. And that business does around 2,000 as one-offs. That's correct.
Nice.
And so similar to like Printify, Printful, and everyone else. But the difference, I guess, is that we're a lot smaller. We work only in the US. And we work with larger sellers where pricing is super important. So, for example, most of our clients are doing 50 orders or more per day. Currently, we're pushing out at peak volumes over 2,500 units a day out of that facility in Orlando, Florida. That's one side of our business. The other side of our business is the e-commerce brands. And so I've talked about this before on the podcast, but PokePet Shop, AnimifyMe.com, CanvasFreaks.com, a new one, ReadyPlayerU.com. And so we're always spinning up new brands, trying different products and having fun. And that's how we're set up.
Dude, you're so rare, man. You're like a unicorn, because you actually share your brands. You come on here. Most people that watch and are familiar with the print-on-demand kind of pocket of YouTube content, it's mainly talking about how people can be beginners, can get started for free immediately as a one-man team, outsourcing everything to Printful. And you know what I mean? And like, you're the opposite. And it's amazing to hear your story. And of course, your numbers are astronomical when they're compared to the average outcome for somebody. And it's like but you're here keeping it real too, which I'm sure everybody appreciates. Like that's always been my goal from the beginning. Like my first 5 years, I published income reports. It's just funny because people will find my content today and be like, oh man, like the gap between where I'm at now, 7.5 years in versus where I was is so wide.
Incredible.
But you go look at my first 5 years. I was transparent about everything, and my numbers were so not impressive. I just kept like, I wasn't as ambitious as you, I would say, but I just kept putting in the work, knowing that it would get me, bigger and bigger numbers.
That's incredible, man. And I think there's something to say about that, right? Like at the end of the day, when you get started, like everyone starts small. It's about taking that first step. And that's what we did. I don't want to sit here and say that we had these massive ambitions and goals to go and achieve and hit 8 figures in revenue. Like when we started, we just wanted to make $5,000, $10,000 a year in extra income, right? But that snowballs. That just kind of like you start learning things, you have unlocks, and then you realize like, okay, it's not so difficult to get to the next level. And so with where I'm at, I look at people that are ahead of me and I start to realize that like they're just people, right? And they're just putting one foot in front of the other. They're unlocking learnings and they're stacking those learnings. And if you do that over a long enough period of time, like you will be great. But to go back to what you were saying about the different methods of scale, I think you're right. Like the way we chose to do it is fully vertically integrated, manufacture everything in-house, build the Shopify stores, right? No, we don't really do too much on Etsy or Amazon. We spend most of like almost 90+% of our revenue is really coming in through our Shopify stores. We're building out the websites, the products, like everything is kind of in-house. And I don't even want to say that was by design. That's just how we learned to do it. So if I was to start again today, I actually think I would do it the way that everyone's learning how to do it, right? Like being able to outsource to Printify, Printful, and all of that is incredible when you can just have an awesome lifestyle and be anywhere in the world to operate it. I managed to get to a place now with our manufacturing and everything where I can do the same thing. I can be anywhere in the world, but for 4 years, that wasn't the case. I had to be here, had to be at the office, right? But now the team has automated everything so that it's possible to kind of get away, which is cool.
Nice. And can I ask, like, part of your growth, like I kind of know my growth story was like all the different ways I sell print on demand, but there was one program called Amazon Merch.
Yeah.
And they have like a tier system. So initially you can only upload 10 designs. And then if you're successful, they give you 25 and then 100 and then 500, just keeps bumping you up. That paced my entire print on demand journey. Like it literally paced everything. Like I let that trickle down to every other platform that I sold on, which like, that was my story. That was my growth story. Like with you, did you say, hey, we're going to start the manufacturing arm, and because we have it, we need to start some Shopify stores because we'll be our own customer? Or was it like kind of the inverse where Shopify is going great question. And now we need to do the manufacturing to pump our margins?
And so it was like, I want to say we were forced into it, to be honest with you, right? It wasn't some genius idea that we had and we're like, oh yeah, this is the way to do it. What happened was we had our first successful store, canvasfreaks.com. And that started to scale. And I think November of 2016, we were drop shipping it from China. All the canvas prints and stuff, they were like multi-panel. So it was like 5 pieces, one design broken down into 5 pieces. And dude, we did 250,000 revenue that first month in November 2016. And like 50% margins after marketing cost of goods. It was insane. Like we had never made that much money in our lives.
You had the inventory? Like, was that another issue?
No.
You have to like rush it in?
So we didn't have any of the inventory. It was coming from China through a drop shipper, right? The supplier was sending one by one to the States, to our customers. And like a month and a half into it, we realized that nobody's receiving their products. They're getting stuck in customs. There's 30-day transit delays, like so many problems. And we're like, on one side, we've built the most incredible new business that could scale to like 5 million the next year. And on the other side, we have thousands of unhappy customers, people that hate our guts. And we're like, we have to fix this. And for some reason, like it never connected. And maybe it's because the industry wasn't so big at that time in 2017, late 2016, but we just didn't think to look for local manufacturers. Instead, the first thought that came into our minds was, let's go and make this ourselves. So we got like 1,000 square foot warehouse. We watched some YouTube videos on how to stretch a canvas.
Like, man? Even that is insane. Like.
Yeah, we bought some like wooden bars. We got a printer and then we started printing and just doing it by hand. And then when we realized that was slow, we started buying like semi-automatic machines to like do it. And now we use a $200,000 German fully automated machine to do it. And it's like, you just step up over time. So it's really interesting how it happened for us. Like, we were forced into it. It wasn't some genius concept and we're like, oh yeah, we're going to go vertically integrated. It's like, we either do this or we die.
Isn't that funny how businesses can take a life of their own sometimes? Where like you become like, you know what I mean? You're almost like a slave to the business because it's making all these sales and you're like, well, I don't want to cancel these sales, obviously.
You just have to act, right? And so like we had options, and that's just the one that we chose. And once we did it, it was like, okay, this is somewhat working. So we just doubled down on it over time. And so like Canvas Freaks kept growing, and it kept feeding the machine for us to manufacture. A year and a half in, we met someone. His name's Trevor. He lives in Canada. He was also selling canvas art, and we became cool with him, and just asked him like, hey, why don't we make your products for you? And that was like the first time we had a client on that side. Started doing it, and it was amazing supplemental income for us, helped cover our overhead. And then we're like, okay, I think we can turn this into a business. And so it was like after a year of starting the manufacturing that we decided to actually make it a real like business of its own. And I'm so glad that we did, because now it's something that like, even if we stop doing e-commerce, stop trying to sell on Shopify, like the volume with all the clients that we have is going to continue doing its thing. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. I love having multiple income streams and monetizing kind of the same thing, like as many ways as possible. Like my whole Ryan's method approach to print on demand is literally like, hey, you already did the research and the design, go sell it on as many products and marketplaces as possible. And then like literally my whole story with e-commerce in general, and even pre-e-commerce, was like, just like when I was a web developer, it was like, learn that skill set, go to 9 to 5, teach it, and start a web development company and start your own websites. It's just like, why not? Right? It's fun. It makes everything, it just makes sense.
You're gamifying life at that point. I feel like you're giving yourself like a new challenge every time. Like you figure something out, you're like, all right, what's the next step? And so like, just to speak on what you were saying about like getting designs and, you know, your method, taking those designs, putting them on as many platforms as you can. Like, it's funny because like we didn't really even consider that. Like, even though we were doing 8 figures, like we didn't consider that until more so this past year. And we realized how much money we're leaving on the table because we like pioneer brand new designs, brand new products that like didn't even exist. We'd crush it on, you know, Shopify. 6 months later, we're going onto Etsy and we see that someone's selling it, right? They started a month after we did on Shopify, and they've gotten thousands of supplemental sales because guess what? There's always going to be an Etsy buyer. There's always going to be an Amazon buyer. And those people, no matter how much they like your product on your website, they're just not going to convert there. They are like just loyal to that platform. And that's where they're going to go to buy it. So even if they see an ad for something that I'm selling, they're just going to make that decision and say, hey, let me see if I can find this on Etsy first. And if they do, that's where they're going to buy it. So like, there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. You have to be where the people are. So yeah, taking all those winners and getting them across every single platform that you can, genius idea. And everybody should be doing it.
Did you ever mess around with like peeling customers from Etsy to Shopify or like Amazon to Shopify? Like, I'm sure, you know, with you manufacturing, you probably have a nice, healthy margin. You could put a little sticker in there that says like 40% off your next order on the domain. As soon as they check out, you know, you got their email and you're good.
So, you know, like my thoughts on that are it absolutely works and everybody should be doing it. But for us, we haven't seen a lot of incremental gains from that. And I think it's because like we're so heavily in personalized gifting. So whenever we make products, a lot of people are buying it during a specific time period. So it might be Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas, right? And then there's like very little brand loyalty almost. It's like, okay, I bought it once. I love it, had a great experience, but now I'm going to forget about you for forever. And just because I think I know that I can find this product elsewhere. So like, even though we've attempted that, right, we've thrown in the little slips and we've, even with like all the remarketing and everything, there's very few return customers. And like that lifetime value is minimal, at least from, you know, the categories and niches that we're in. That's been my experience. Have you had a lot of success with that?
I haven't really tried, honestly. Like I've been kind of just selling into as many niches as possible. I don't worry about brand, but I get it. You know what I mean? I get it. Like if we wanted to sell to Chihuahua lovers, like I love my Chihuahua dogs. Like when I hear the word dog, I think Chihuahua. Like I'm like, oh yeah, there's other types. Like I could be on the like Chihuahua Shopify owners email list, and that would make sense. But you know what I mean? I'm like in so many niches and whatnot that I don't really worry about it.
No, that totally makes sense. And like we do it for a lot of our clients too. And I think people that own their email lists, people that, I mean, there's definitely a ton of remarketing efforts. There's actually a tool for anybody that's not on Etsy or Amazon that has like their own Shopify. It's called Postpilot. And I highly recommend people look into it because what it is direct mail. And so everybody gets mail. But like, how frequently do e-commerce brands, print on demand sellers, things like that, how frequently does anybody advertise through direct mail? So it's like a full circle moment in marketing where, okay, this company is doing such a good job driving your online customers back in, from offline channels. So that's something worth looking into. We gave it a shot last year during, I want to say it was Valentine's Day and Father's Day, and we saw pretty awesome results.
Nice. Yeah. Snail mail. People still use it.
Yeah.
I used to work for, like, I was a web developer, but my job was like basically working for nonprofits.
Yeah.
So yeah, like they were all about, that was like a huge part of their marketing every year was the snail mail. That's what, I don't know if anybody else calls it snail mail, but that's the only thing they ever referred to it as. So that's what I think of it as.
It surprises you like what can actually work. And the fact that does is it's so funny because like we're so dialed in on everything with, digital marketing, making the most incredible content that you can, driving traffic. And it's like, well, why not go back to the basics? Because the basics actually work. So, so there's
I love
something.
that. I'll put a link
there.
to it in the description if anybody wants to check it out too. Just, I hate when like I'm watching or listening to a podcast and the links aren't there. So I'm always like, I got to put everything in the description. Do you mind also just kind of opening up about like, so you scaled, I guess if you want to go in the linear sequence or maybe open up about like last year, because totally. It wasn't all roses, right?
Yeah. So like our growth trajectory was interesting because like pre-COVID, we probably got up to like 5 mil to 6 mil in top line revenue annual, right? And then from like COVID onwards, it skyrocketed, right? So 2020, 2021, things 2x, 3x, and we just scaled infinitely, or that's what it felt like. And so back in, I guess I want to say by like the end of 22, we started seeing like dwindling effects of e-commerce, right? During that stage, like people weren't buying as much as they were during that COVID period. And then coming back down from that, what ended up happening was, I think it was actually, it was the Q4 of 2022. We were expecting lower volumes. We ended up crushing it with our brands, but that wasn't a good thing because we had a brand new product category and they were embroidered hoodies. So like, I don't know if anyone's seen these products. They're pretty much like you have a portrait picture of a couple and then it's like a line art of them that's like printed onto a hoodie or embroidered onto a hoodie. And so we were selling that product for ourselves and for a client. And we scaled that up to like, I think it was 400 or 500 orders. 400 or 500 orders a day. And so it broke all of our systems. Like it broke everything. And so we started falling so far behind on those orders in-house that it started making us fall behind on other product categories, and like almost everything in the pipeline was affected. So what happened was we had to stop all of our ads in January of 2023. After Q4 ended, we like shut off everything. We're like, we have to make this right. Start refunding people, giving them free products, like sincere apologies, all of that, especially to our clients as well. And like the revenue just kind of stopped. Like we probably went 50% down in revenue in January of 2023. So imagine doing like, 1.5 to, 2 million a month. And then January hits and we're at like sub 500. And even though that sounds like a great number, it's not because of all the overhead that we have.
Right.
And so, we pay probably close to 40,000 a month for our warehouse. Our payroll is, on a monthly basis, probably up to like 130, 140K a month. So you have to cover all of these costs. But when the revenue is not there, it's like, how do you do it? What ended up happening is we had the most like horrible Q1 and Q2 in 2023. We lost well over $100,000 a month. And so much of that could have been avoided had we had the right systems in place in our business. If we were watching our numbers and our like balance sheets, our, P&Ls really, really closely, but we weren't doing any of that. We got so accustomed to a certain level of income that we were really lazy about those things that really matter. We started inflating everything. We had all these software costs. We had all these people that we didn't even need, right, in the business. And so like all of that compounded to just us losing like probably $750,000 the first 6 months of 2023. And having gone through that, right, it put us in this place where we didn't know if we were going to make payroll at a certain point. And then like somehow through like extending credit lines with all of our suppliers, somehow with like the line of credit that we had with the bank and all of that, like just had to get maxed out, but we survived. We did get to make payroll. We did get to keep things together. And this past year has been humbling because we're doing amazing now. We've managed to build everything back up to, you know, where we wanted to get to. But so much of that has been paying back the people that we owe, the banks, the, you know, the vendors, and getting even. So like as a business owner, it's really interesting because your business is doing great. You're doing 20 million this year in revenue. Everything is like wonderful, but you're not really getting paid. And so that's like the big takeaway for me. That's been like, I'm trying to separate myself, Ahmed, as the person from the business. And it's like the last 7 years, we put everything into one basket, you know, poured our souls into it. And it's like, man, it can really flip just like that, you know, through whether it's through mismanagement, whether it's, you know, you took your eye off the ball. So that was a big learning experience for me. And, you know, of course, building a business, you build so many skills. And so you have a certain level of talent that you can take anywhere. But for me, I think it was just that takeaway that, hey, like you should really be conscious about what you're building. You know, is it necessary to build something so big if it doesn't really complement your life and what you want to achieve? For me, having my second kid, you know, a couple months ago, realizing that I want to prioritize family, realizing that there's a certain amount of freedom that I want in my life. Like, is it necessary to build something so big, so ambitious? I think it's important for everyone to be really intentional about how they build their business and why they're doing it before they go and do it, and probably take on too much. So yeah, that's everything that happened last year. And it was really, really challenging. But I think I'm blessed because I'm someone that, you know, even with all that pressure, I can sleep at night, man. I sleep good no matter what's happening. So yeah, that's everything we went through. It was tough, man. I'm sure anyone that's built anything great has been through something similar.
Dude, isn't it weird? I feel like it really is like the sine wave of life. You know what I mean? It's just like everything inevitably is like going to go up and down to some extent. Or even like how like the stock market kind of like encapsulates like almost like real life too. Like it's always kind of grinding up and to the right, but every now and then it's got to correct.
It has to.
And then you know what I mean? It's just weird how, I don't know, but I really appreciate you sharing that story, being so honest. And I don't think most people can relate because, or at least not on your scale,
but like even on a smaller scale, you know, like if you've managed to build up a somewhat successful print-on-demand store that's, you know, giving you supplemental income of $2,000-3,000 a month even, right? Like if that tanks, let's say your listing gets taken down. I mean, you know, what, even if it's on a smaller scale, that's a similar feeling, right? And we've had that happen too, right? At a smaller scale, I guess. And so it's relatable in that sense that it feels like your whole world is burning down, but really you only ever lose like if you stop trying. So for us, I think that was the biggest blessing is like I have two co-founders. All three of us were able to kind of get our heads back in the game and say that, look, it doesn't matter what we're going through right now. We're in it for the long term. So if we look 10 years into the future, we know where we want to be. This is going to be a tiny little blip in the history of like what we're doing. Does it really matter? It only matters because we're in it right now. Let's put our head down and grind. So how do we fix it? We sat down, we were absolutely like brutal with ourselves about what we needed to change. So we started cutting costs across the board in the company, whether it was payroll, whether it was software that we were paying for, it was renegotiating with vendors, all of those different things. And really that just saved us like so many tens of thousands a month right there. And then on the other side, one of my co-founders was focused only on revenue. And it's like, okay, we're cutting the costs on one side, scaling the revenue as much as possible, dropping new products, right? New product development is the reason why we survived.
That was kind of that's what got you in trouble though, right? So you had to be like conscious of how you did it.
Absolutely. And so what we did was we went back to kind of thinking about it from like a really interesting way. We're like, okay, we have these flatbed printers. We know that you know, if we're printing on these metal cards and, you know, like PokePet Shop, for example, we have like an awesome product there, and we can print 300-400 of these in an hour. Okay, so like, what does it look like if we're selling 2,000 of these? Cool, we can do that in a day, and it takes very little manpower, very little overhead, and it costs very little. So we sat down and all we did was iterate on that product line, and truly, like, that's what saved us. Like, we had so many new awesome designs drop. I think probably have tested over like 60 or 70 different designs, found a couple winners and scaled them up, and that just kind of brought us back to where we are now. Pretty much paid off all the debt, and like, we're in a place now where it's just been green for the last 6-7 months, and, you know, ever so grateful for that.
I love that, man. And it is kind of a similar story to a lot of other, I would say, like, people that do print on demand, but are willing to invest in like ads and kind of, you know, we can have a winner or winning idea, but be on, you know, Amazon, and Amazon just doesn't show it to anybody.
Right.
But kind of like when I talk to people who are willing to invest in marketing and make sure they're getting in front of different demographics and whatnot, and testing different products with different variations. And it's like, you do find those winners, and you really just kind of double down, triple down, etc. It's awesome.
I mean, that's exactly how we scale, right? Because if there's a ton of intent, obviously on Etsy, like, we've had success with Etsy listings and all that too. And so like, obviously you're sitting and you're kind of waiting for a lot of intent to come by. So like, if you think about Father's Day, for example, like, that's going to drive a ton of conversions. And so even on Etsy with some of our listings, like, we'll go from 3-4 orders a day to probably a couple hundred a day during the right time, but we're investing in the marketing. We're making sure it's not just organic traffic that's kind of coming through. So like, what are the metrics you're looking at? You're looking at your conversion rates, and naturally you're going to see that skyrocket during like the right time. So when Father's Day is coming around, it's typically around 3 weeks prior to it that you're going to start seeing that conversion rate pick up. As a, you know, print on demand shop owner, you have to be really cognizant of that. You have to pay attention to that metric. Once you see that that number has picked up 25%, 30%, it's not your listing that's suddenly driving all this traffic. It's an outside macro event like Father's Day that's getting people inspired and getting them to come in to buy it. So once you see that conversion rate uptick, okay, you better start spending on ads. And by doing that, you're going to be able to show it to as many people as possible, obviously, and scale your listing. And so that's really our strategy. That's how we work. Whether it's on Shopify, whether it's on other platforms, it's like, we'll dial things down to almost nothing in the off season. And then 3 weeks to 4 weeks prior to a holiday, we're going as hard as possible and scaling up the numbers as much as possible. And then as soon as the holiday ends, we'll shut everything off again, and we'll do it again and wait for the next holiday. So that's kind of how our business is built. And it's interesting because it definitely works across these other platforms too.
And behind the scenes, what is, I guess, we're getting into like, I guess, running a business and, you know, kind of branching away from POD, but hopefully if you guys are still watching, like, let us know if you're enjoying the conversation in the comments. Love to hear from you guys, and check out part 1 and part 2, please. But like, what is it like as a, you know, employer when you kind of are going between these massive kind of expansion and then contractions constantly?
That's a great question. And so we've found solutions over time. There's like, for example, on the physical manufacturing side, your best friend is going to be technology. So we've invested in that as much as possible. Like I mentioned, the machine from Germany that helps us, you know, scale canvas prints, hundreds of them per hour at the push of like a button. And that's the level of automation that you need, right? That's number one. Number two, there's like, when it comes to like, I guess, bringing on talent, there's a bunch of different software out there that you can log into, and it's kind of like an Uber for on-demand job employment. And so you're putting up a listing, you'll have a bunch of local people apply, as long as it's like an easy to do job that doesn't require a lot of training. You can have them come in, learn it within 30 minutes and just do their thing, like printing labels, for example. So we're able to rely on tools like that to go from, okay, 3 shippers when it's slow to, 15 when it's busy per day. And then there's no like long-term commitment to those team members because, again, they're just on those apps looking for short-term employment. So we get to kind of tackle it like that, and it works great. And then obviously on the digital advertising side, it's just toggling ad budgets and making sure that you're staying profitable. So that side is really easy. And so like we've perfected that process over the last 6-7 years. And given to, you know, where we are now, that's a big reason for our success, because we see a lot of competitors, they'll scale it up to a certain extent and then they get stuck. And why do they get stuck? Is because they can't, you know, manage that level of volume, whether it's order management, whether it's customer service and responding to all those customers. And so I think if you really dial in on those operations, that's really when you start to see a different level of volume in your business. Getting sales is one part, actually fulfilling it, I think that's the harder part.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the transparency, because that's got to be in the back of everybody's minds. That's like selling POD, but like we're paying, you know, another company to fulfill. And we know that they've got their margins greased as a part of that. And it's always, you know what I mean? It's like, man, I could make so much money if I did it myself, but then what does that entail? And it's just like, you literally, or I at least, you know, I'm fortunate here with the YouTube channel, is like, I get to hear both sides, you know, and then the good and the bad of both sides.
Yeah. And I will say, like, being a manufacturer, like I can give you guys some insights into the numbers. Like when it comes to canvas prints, like a 16 by 12 or something like that, you know, you can go on Printify and find it for whatever price that they're selling it from. And everyone knows how it works. They'll, you know, create partnerships with all the different manufacturing facilities around the world and have their margins. I would say that if anyone's even remotely getting some volume, it's really worth skipping Printful, Printify, and going directly to the manufacturer. Every single person watching this, whether they're selling t-shirts, whether they're selling canvases, you know, whatever software that they're using, there's no reason you can't do a quick Google search and find a t-shirt manufacturer that's probably 2 miles from you, a print shop that's 2 miles from you, right? You contact them, go visit their facility. They would love to take on your business. And more frequently than not, you're going to save a ton of money doing it. So obviously this doesn't apply if you're getting, you know, maybe 3 orders a day. I don't think it's worth your, you know, the headache. But if you're getting 20-ish orders a day, or, you know, even 10 orders a day, if you look at the numbers, you know, in a month, you might be able to extract an additional $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month into your pocket by skipping, you know, that middleman software company and going directly to the manufacturer. Something to work. I think that's something worth thinking about.
I love that
especially
insight,
if you're scaling. Yeah.
And it's not for everybody, but you know what I mean? Somebody needed to hear that, and they might go and they might look. I have my private group, and I had a speaker on a couple weeks back, and like he's got a bunch of Etsy shops, right? He's not on YouTube, so people wouldn't know him, but like he did what you just said, except for he launched a new Etsy shop dedicated specifically to a kind of different product type that's not, you know, commonly offered, that he could find locally.
Yeah.
And he's scaling that up, like, and it's working like a charm. And it's, you know, the margins are a little bit better because he's got that relationship, and just an interesting story. It's like there's so many fun ways to make money online these days, really.
I absolutely love that, because that is exactly what we're doing with like so much of our volume. It's funny because internally, me and my partner, we call it product on demand versus print on demand. So a lot of times we're thinking about something that's so unique, that's like a substrate that nobody else offers. So it's not a canvas. It's not going to be your standard t-shirt or anything like that. It's a format that I'm trying to give like a good example of something that isn't offered by any traditional print on demand company, but you'd find that product and then we're able to like print on it or create a custom product out of it. Nobody else is able to compete on that regard. So you get like 2 years of just freedom, right? To be able to crush it in that very niche space before anybody else can find it. And that's it. It's kind of like you said, it's only really possible when you work with those local manufacturers. So for anyone that's like serious about it, it really is worth it to kind of look into it. And obviously the value that you're going to drive to those local manufacturers is awesome too, because you're helping your hometown. So totally worth doing.
That's right. Support the small businesses, right?
Totally, man.
Yeah, before the corporations take over. Like you were talking about finding local printers, I'm just thinking like custom ink $30 t-shirts. Like I live near Washington DC, bro. I like literally live near the swamp, you know what I mean? Like every business around here. I was gonna say I wanted to compliment you too, just because it's like, man, in my area, like all these businesses, man, almost, I don't know, I don't want to generalize, but it's like so many of them are being paid by the infinite money printer, just benefiting from the proximity to the literal infinite money printer that incentivizes you to spend the money. Like they'll hire employees, keep them on the payroll because they need to justify the higher budget, the budget expansion, because people at the top make money off that employee being on the payroll. Don't get me started on this stuff. And they need our monetary base to expand. Otherwise, it goes into a deflationary spiral and it all ends. You know what I mean? So it's, I can't, man. I can't. I need to get out of this area, bro.
No, it's, I mean, I have a lot of family in that area too. So I hear similar things, you know, they're involved, I guess at certain levels, and like, it's very
not
different,
real business. You know what I'm saying? Like you started a real business, you had real issues. And in this area, it's like, it's not always like that. A lot of times it's not like that. You know what I mean? Like seed funding comes from a government contract.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, hey, like, hopefully you can make it work with what we're giving you. If not, don't worry though. It doesn't matter. You know,
sounds like a dream.
You just move on to the next thing. Right. And nobody loses.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. So I found it really inspirational to have you here today, man. Every time we sit down, it's awesome. I get so much value. If anybody's still watching, sorry for my rant, but definitely let Ahmed know about like that you appreciated him being here. Do you want me to plug anything for you while we're here?
Not in particular, but you know, at the end of the day, we are a manufacturer for wall decor products. So if anyone's watching this that has interest in working with us, please do reach out to me directly. You can find me on Instagram at D2C Ahmed. You can shoot me a DM, you know, and I'll connect you with the team. You know, our goal is to give you the best customer service, to give you the best prices, and again, skip that middleman because we are the manufacturer. So if there's any interest, definitely reach out. Aside from that, I'm open to conversation and just giving advice, helping people on their journey, because again, I'm still on that journey and I know exactly how it is. So having any kind of help is awesome. And Ryan, like truly love what you're doing with the community that you're building, bringing so much awareness into print on demand, helping people get started. The world needs more people like you. So keep up the awesome work, man.
No, I appreciate it, man. I'm gonna hit you up next time I'm in Florida. I got to visit the facility. That'd be a good video. I'll bring my videographer.
Oh, I'd love that, man. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That'd be sick. And I'm gonna link to your Instagram. I checked in the last videos. I did link to your Instagram, so I'm gonna do that again as well. I'll put that at the top of the description.
Sweet. I appreciate you.
Cool, man. Well, hey, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy, so I'll let you go. Guys, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you guys at the next